welcome to week 7. We're talking about age-based conversations today, and I am telling you, we have got a treat for you. I have Dr. Stan Jones with me. I'm going to introduce him to you in just a moment and tell you a little bit about him, but I want you to know how amazing it is that we have him with us today. We have been fans of a book series that he and his wife developed years and years and years ago. I'm going to tell you about that in a moment, but we searched high and low for the author of this incredible book series, and Caitlin herself was able to find him in the midst of the World Wide Web and reach out, and he actually got back to us and just let us know how excited he was to contribute to this project. So we are honored, we are overjoyed that he's decided to join us in this project and collaborate a little bit. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. He's a pretty incredible man. Stan Jones completed his PhD in clinical psychology at Arizona State and joined the faculty of Wheaton College. His passion has been to harness the tools of psychology for the benefit of God's people. After 3 years as regular faculty, he was named departmental chair and led efforts to establish Wheaton's clinical psychology doctoral program, which has now produced hundreds of Christian psychologists to serve the church. During that same period, he and his amazing wife, Brenna, collaborated to produce the first God's Design for Sex book series. He spent 20 years of service at Wheaton as Wheaton College provost. He retired in 2019 and remains an active researcher and scholar, as well as supporting Brenna's work as spiritual director and teacher of spiritual direction. In addition to keeping the God's Design for Sex series current, he has authored or edited a number of other books and almost 100 professional articles and chapters. This is Dr. Stan Jones, and we could not be more excited to have him with us today to talk a little bit about age-based conversations with our children. Dr. Stan, welcome.
Lauren, it's great to be here. Thank you so much. I'm overjoyed to be with you. So I'm just going to jump in and start talking about how the series came about, and then get into the substance of it. So we when we got married and when we had our first child right before we were leaving graduate school, we wondered what are we going to do about teaching our kids about sex. I grew up in a home where we never talked about it ever, and Brenda grew up in a home where they talked about it frequently, but not particularly from a moral, but just sort of a general be good sort of perspective. And as Christians, we wanted to handle it right with our kids. And when we came to Wheaton, we were very fortunate to wind up in a church with a woman named Carolyn Nystrom, who had a few years before written a book called Before I Was Born that was intended for kids 5 to 8. This is the book that is second in our series. That book was already out of print. It sold about 1,500 copies and died, so to speak. They stopped publishing it. And we managed to get a copy. And when our daughter turned 5, we read it to her. And we thought, this is wonderful. This is exactly what should be done. But we need to start earlier, and we need to keep it going. So we got the idea of writing books to help parents have these conversations about sex. So we decided to write the books. This is our family about the time the first editions of the books were published in 1994. We had 3 children, girl, boy, girl, and we had launched this venture. We remember reading these books to our kids, and so just as a way of pointing you parents to the future. The next picture shows our family now. Each of our kids are married. We have 4 grandsons. Our children are all employed and own their own homes and are doing great, and we love being with them. And so it's just a joy to be able to be with your family and see the fruits of God's work in their lives. So I'm really excited about sharing about this series with you. So I looked carefully at what the 6 sessions that have come before. I really commend Lauren and Caitlin and the other staff of Moral Revolution for their thoughtfulness. It's great to start off talking about your family of origins, what impact they had upon you, about what's happening in your home right now, who's in your house. Was I think session number 4. What are the influences? I just want to give you one example from my perspective of the kinds of things that are out there. I was really shocked about 4 years ago. Someone pointed out to me that in the online Teen Vogue magazine, that they had put out for teenagers 13 to 15 had put out a guide, what you need to know about anal sex. And I remember thinking, I am not in Kansas anymore. Mind you, I had not been under the illusion I've been in Kansas for any length of time, but I was really shocked. This was to me a new low, that that Teen Vogue would take it upon themselves to teach kids about anal sex. And a lot of people complained about this issue, and the response of the editors was this picture on Twitter. Literally, this is not made up. This was the response of the Teen Vogue editors to criticism. And so that's the kind of respect Christian views get, and that's the kind of environment where we're teaching our kids about sex in. And so we have to have something powerful to counter that. I really appreciate that the fifth session of this series is to kill the talk. One of the greatest delusions parents have is that you save it all up, have one talk with your kids, and you're done. When you consider the weight of influences that are coming at your children, how in the world can we believe that one talk is going to get it done? We believe that you have to create a lifetime of conversation with your children. And so just as they said in the 6 sessions, create a new culture of connectivity, curiosity, and communication. And so we want to say to you, whatever is stopping you from talking to your kids about sex, get over it and get on with it. That's the point of our series. And we hope that our series will help you, and I hope that this talk will help you. So as we were writing our book, we were thinking about what are the general principles we want to teach parents. And so I want to show you that we want to talk about the first 2 general principles out of 12 principles that we have. And I'm going to talk at some length about these 2. The first principle is that sex education is the shaping of character. And the second principle is parents are the principal sex educators. Parents, you don't have an option not to be the principal sex educator. You will have the primary influence on your kids' views of sex. The only option you have is will you have a messed up, unthoughtful, casual, confused impact on your child, or will you have a thoughtful, engaged, informed impact upon your children? So you will be the principal sex educator. Will you do it well, or will you do it poorly? Of course, we want you to do it well, and that's the purpose of what we're offering here. Now, so you're in the spotlight. So how can we equip you? Well, when we say sex education, we oftentimes think about education as providing information, and so parents often say, "Well, I don't know all the details. They might ask me a question I don't know." Sex education is much less about information and much more about the shaping of character. And to help us think about this, I want you to look with me at Deuteronomy 6, 1 through 9. I love these passages because they teach us so much about what it means to be a parent. Starting with verse 1, these are the commands, decrees, and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you to observe in the land that you're crossing the Jordan to possess, so that you, your children, and their children after them may fear the Lord your God as long as you live, by keeping all his decrees and commands that I give you, and so that you may enjoy a long life. Hear, O Israel, and be careful to obey so that it may go well with you. So this first half talks about this cross-generational impact for good that obedience brings. And then the author of Deuteronomy goes on, Moses says, these commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down, when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. This is a prescription to immerse your children in shaping them. We need to think about every dimension of our lives as an opportunity to shape our children. So that's the way sex education needs to be done, is part of all of life. Many parents think about sex education as, I want to prevent a disaster. I don't want my kid to get a sexually transmitted disease. I don't want them to get pregnant. I don't want them to get somebody pregnant. I want to prevent a disaster. That's thinking way too small. We need to prepare our kids for good goals, positive goals, for living. What should be the goal of sex ed? The goal of sex ed should be to shape them for a life of well-being. And so we developed this 5-factor model of sexual character. And this is just a way to think about what it is you're trying to shape when you're a child. We divided it into 5 pieces. The first thing you shape is the child's needs. And I'll talk about each of these in just a second. What are the fundamental motivators? What are the drives of every human being? And then what directs those is our values. The values are the ways we intuitively come to believe that we can get those needs met. And then that's in turn shaped by the core beliefs, what we believe about life and how we think about life. And then out of that flows the skills that we develop, skills like assertiveness and so forth and so on. And then finally, there's a whole set of things that shape character from outside, the supports that are there, peer support, and parental support. And so if you think about those 5 factors, you'll have a good handle on how to tackle the shaping of your child's sexual character. So let's jump in and talk about the first of these needs. When we think about what every person's fundamental needs are, we really believe that we find those out in Genesis chapter 2. The first need is for love, for relatedness. The Lord God said to Adam, "It is not good for the man to be alone." And then a little bit earlier, he says, God placed Adam in the garden to work it and to take care of it. So the second need for people is significance, for purpose. We are made for relationships and love and significance and purpose. We don't need to have perfect love, but we need love. We don't need to have perfect work. We need work. And so one of the things that I remember seeing and realizing this dovetails perfectly with understanding these needs this way is I saw some fundamental research that has stood up for decades now about parenting styles. And what is interesting about this is that they talked about there being 4 basic types of parents divided on two dimensions. One is acceptance, which is love. There are parents who have low acceptance of their children, and parents who have high acceptance. Think of that as love. And then the parents who have lax standards, they don't expect much from their kids, and high standards. Parents who are low acceptance, I don't care, and lax standards, I don't care what you do, I don't care for you, and I don't care what you do, are neglecting parents. There are parents who are high acceptance, I love you, love you, love you, but I don't care what you do. They're permissive parents. Throw a tantrum, I don't care, because I love you. There are also parents who are low on acceptance, I don't care, but by golly, I'm going to crack the whip and you're going to do what I tell you to. So they're the authoritarian parent, low on acceptance, high on standards. And then there are parents that they're high on both, the authoritative parents, and high on acceptance, high on standards. And consistently, parents who are authoritative, high on acceptance, high on standards, are the parents who produce the best outcomes on every variable that they can measure: school performance, emotional well-being, not getting in trouble with the law, you name it. People who are authoritative parents have better outcomes. And what I like to emphasize is when you think about this, God's character is often defined in terms of 2 primary dimensions, love and holiness. And that's really what this is. The love dimension is acceptance, and standards is the holiness, the performance dimension of how we live. And so this is a way of getting into the needs of your child. Your child needs to know you love them and that they are significant, that they have a significant role to play in the world. And so then let's just talk about values. Values are the things that shape how we meet these needs. And so the values that we give our parents are oftentimes we present the values to our kids by what we model in the home. You know the old sayings that values are less taught than caught. And people oftentimes say, "Speak up! I can't hear over your actions." So in other words, you're saying one thing but acting in another way. So we teach our kids what we value by the choices we make. Are we turning away from family because we want to get that extra $100,000 or $50,000 or $10,000? Are we giving up on vacation time because we don't want to spend time with them? We want to watch a baseball game or something, or are we turning away from reading to our child to go out drinking or something? What are our values? And so values are taught by how we act. Values are also taught by what we praise. So the parent who says, who only praises their child when they get good grades, but doesn't praise them when they show moral character, is teaching their child what they value. And so be cautious and aware of what you praise your child for, and praise them for the right things. And values are also taught by the stories that parents tell. So we made it a point of reading great literature to our kids and often talking about the decisions that we're making and so forth. And so those are key things that you need to do. Next about beliefs, character formation needs to grapple with the content of Scripture. So we need to replace destructive beliefs that are so prevalent in our culture with Christian beliefs. And so I'm going to quickly talk about that. The key beliefs are, let me start with the image of God. God created man in his own image. Male and female, he created them. And so each individual, male and female, is an image of the unity of the relational loving persons of God. Now, in Matthew 19, Jesus teaches about divorce, and he says, in telling the Jews that they should not be divorcing their wives, he says, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh? They are no longer two, but one. What God has joined together, let not man separate. And so Jesus is here connecting the passage about being created male and female, which is what God says about the image, and he connects it directly to a man becoming one with his wife. And so this is why the Apostle Paul in Ephesians chapter 5 says about marriage, this mystery is profound, but I'm saying that marriage, refers to Christ and the church. Marriage is the great symbol of God's love for us. The Bible starts with a marriage celebration in the Garden of Eden. It ends with a wedding and a banquet at the end of time. And all throughout, God declares his covenantal, deep love for his shabby, unfaithful, unworthy bride to be. Just as God's love bore fruit, so also does human love bear fruit through marriage. So think of your own marital relationship as an opportunity to show your kids what love is about. And love is like an icon through which kids can see a bit of God. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's obviously it matters, but if you're divorced, if you're separated, if you're never been married and have children, you can show your child love, and you're showing them the image of God through you. And so God wants us to love passionately and embody what we're saying to kids. So those are some of the beliefs that we have to cover. And so skills, there are all kinds of skills we need to teach our kids. We need to teach them empathy, how to feel with other kids, and to read the feelings of others. We need to teach them strength and assertiveness, how to speak up and defend themselves. We need to teach them self-control. We need to teach them delay of gratification. We need to teach them decision-making. All these things are part of making decisions. Think of your child as a teenager deciding, will I take this drug at this party, and what kind of decisions will follow? That it requires incredible strength, assertiveness, delay of gratification, decision making. Those things are skills you start building with your child when they're 1 year old. So you've got to think in the long term. So, and then finally, when you think about sports, as you think about your child's character, where you have them plugged in church, in peer groups, how you conduct yourselves, your family, all these things matter greatly to how your child turns out. So those are the 5 factors for doing character, shaping sexual character. And so our goal is we want to prepare our kids for marriage, reaching the goal of kids becoming mature adults who can have marriages filled with spiritual, sexual, and emotional intimacy. Requires a lifelong effort of shaping their entire character. And it's also the case, though, that we're shaping our child for singleness, reaching the goal of kids becoming mature adults who can live single lives, whether it's temporary until they get married or long-term that they never get married, that are characterized by maturity, depth, and friendships filled with spiritual and emotional intimacy. That too requires a lifelong effort of shaping our child's entire character. And so those are the first 2 principles. I'll go much more quickly here into the next set of principles. Starting with principle 3, I'll be hitting on these later. So first principles are most potent. Why let the world teach your kid the wrong message and then try to correct it? Jump in there first with the first message. Seize the teachable moments. Become a parent who the child wants to ask questions to, not somebody that they're afraid to ask with. Stories are powerful teaching tools. Accurate and explicit messages are best. I remember there's an old joke about the kid rooting around in the closet for looking, and the parent comes in and says, "What are you looking for?" He says, "Well, I'm looking for your shovel." He says, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you said the baby's born because daddy plants a seed in the mommy. I want to see the shovel." And so the accurate and explicit messages are best. Children are not good at guessing and figuring out things on their own. Positive messages are very powerful. We need to rid ourselves of some of the negative baggage we carry about sexuality, and take on how to present things positively. We can inoculate our children against negative beliefs, prepare them for the things that they're going to face, We need to repeat and repeat and repeat what we say because kids don't get it on the first time. And a close relationship with your child is very important. The 11th and 12th principles are that sex is not everything, keep your perspective, and our God can forgive, heal, and redeem anything. I want to say to the parents out there, I know what it's like to have the police pull up at your house at 2:00 in the morning and have something to discuss with you about your children. I know what it's like to have a child drugged at a party and to deal with that. I know what it's like to have kids make mistakes. We know what it's like to have kids do all kinds of things. But there's life on the other side of those things. And sex is not everything. God can redeem anything. And so it's in a sense, nothing could be more important than sex education, but on the other hand, it pales in importance to God's abiding grace in our lives. And so relax, God's got this. And so Jesus oftentimes says, do not be afraid. It doesn't mean there's not real things to be afraid of. There are, but he's with us and he will walk us through it. So now I want to say to you, the purpose of our books is not to do the talk for you. Our books are written as scripts to give you the words to say, to get it out there and start, not end the discussion. The books should be jumping off points for you to continue the discussions. What you want is to read the book and the kids say, well, what about this? What about that? How do I think about this? And so forth. So that's what we're aiming for. Yeah, I want to move now to talking about each of the life stages. So I must begin with the very young child before age 5. This is a time to teach your children positive, accurate, repeated stories and information about their sexuality that's age appropriate. It's far more powerful to form a child's view of sexuality from scratch than correct the distortions that they get in the world. You wouldn't try to teach them math by asking random peers or strangers to teach them, and then you correct their errors. You want to form it from the beginning. And so with the very young child, you want to fill in the gaps. And so you want to teach them that they are loved beyond measure by you and by God. You want to teach them that God intended the family to be the primary arena for the experience of love, life devotion, and unity. That you want them to develop their trust in God's law is reliable and good, that they can trust the scriptures. And you want them to believe that their physical bodies are a gift, that their sexual natures are a gift, their sexual organs are a gift, and that their capacity for sexual pleasure is a good gift. These are all wonderful, wonderful gifts that we have. And so we added this book, the story of me, and I'm going to read briefly from that book. We have this brief interchange where if your child is a reader already at a young age, they can read the child part, or you can do both parts. The child says, "What was I like as a baby?" The mother says, "You had the most perfect little arms, feet, eyes, and nose, and you had brown eyes and dark hair. The doctor saw right away that you had a penis, and that's how she knew you were a boy. You were beautiful. We loved you before you were born, and we loved you even more when we got to hold you." And the child says, "I have a penis. That makes me a boy like daddy. I'm glad I'm a boy." Mother says, "I am too, and so is God. He made you so very special." And the father says, "Girls are special too. God gave Sarah a vagina and a womb like mommy, and he didn't give that to you. That makes her a girl. Only girls can become mommies, and only boys can become daddies. God thinks both boys and girls are special." And that's just a simple way of saying to your child, you have a penis, she has a vagina. That's the way the world is. It's good. It's a good gift. And so you bless the child with the sense that their physical body is a gift from God, and that their sexuality is a gift from God, and it's something good is in store for them as a result of those gifts. You face challenges young in life, handling sexual curiosity and play. We urge you that one of the things you need to get it out of your head is that children that sexual play is evil, is a sign of evil. It's just natural curiosity. So this is, our sexual organs are made for pleasure. A child's organs don't give the kind of adult pleasure that parents experience, but they are pleasurable nevertheless. I remember explaining to a graduate student when I was teaching sexuality about how kids can get into self-pleasure, and I saw this guy, the light bulb go on for this guy. He said, "Now I understand why my 18-month daughter sits on my hip and wiggles constantly, and I never knew what that was, and now I'm freaked out." And I said, "Don't freak out. Just hold her a different way if it makes you uncomfortable, and help her to develop skills of having fun other ways, and just be glad she's a girl." So those kind of things happen. So don't be freaked out by dirty language. That kids test out limits. Just teach them modesty. Just teach them restraint, manners, handle questions about your sexuality. You want to communicate to your child that you too are a sexual being, but you don't have to give them detailed questions. You can answer questions in general, but also protect your own privacy. And so those are some of the things that you can do to handle your kids at an early age. Everybody's afraid of sexual abuse with children. Teach your children that their body is private, that you talk about it at home, and they can share their body with the doctor when he needs to examine them. But other than that, their bodies are private, and that they should not keep secrets from mom and dad, and that they should trust their feelings about who loves them really, and that they should always come and tell you what is going on with them. So I'm going to jump. I know I'm moving very fast, but so I'm going to move next to the young child, 5 to 8. My subtitle here is "What is sex and why do people do that?" So I remember when we first got Carolyn's book, which is the second book in our series, we thought, boy, this seems awfully young, but we thought, why not? So I remember reading it to our oldest daughter, when she was 5.5, and the different reactions to our kids when we described what sex was about was amazing. So our oldest daughter said, "Oh, okay, that makes sense," and took it in stride and walked away. And we thought, wow, what just happened there? Our son heard the exact same words from our mouth and said, "That's the most disgusting dirty thing I've ever heard." And my youngest daughter's reaction was, "I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this," and running out of the room. So we got all three reactions that I think about cover the spectrum. So, but all three of them, you can just roll with it and then just keep talking about them, because that's what you got to do. Why tell them so early? Well, the decision is not a moral decision. You're not corrupting your child. You're preparing them. You're equipping them for a world where this is going to be discussed. And remember the power of first messages. You don't want them to find out from a distorted perspective and then have to correct it. And so sometime between the age 5 and 8, we suggest that you tell the kids about the nature of sexual intercourse. You need to be accurate, but not lewd or crude. You need to err on the side. We always tell parents, err on the side of giving your kids a little bit more information than what you think they want. Because what we found is that if you give kids too much information, they just turn it off and it just flies over their head. And so they'll ask about it, or you can bring it up again later. Talk until your kids lose interest, and then roll with it. But give them information, and remember always that the most important truths are not the physical truths, they're the spiritual and relational truths that are much more important about these things. And so that's why we love the segment from when Carolyn, the beauty of Carolyn's explanation of sexual intercourse is just wonderful. This is reading from the core of the second book, Before I Was Born. Friends brings gifts to weddings. God also made a special gift for husband and wives. It's called sex. God's rules say that only people who are married to each other should have sex. It is God's way of making families strong. After a man and woman are married, they share their bodies with each other. They like holding each other close. When a husband and wife lie close together, he can fit his penis into her vagina. His semen flows inside of her, and their bodies feel good all over. Husbands and wives want to be alone during the sex so they can think only of each other. And then she goes on and says, and that is the way babies are born, the way babies are made. A husband can't make a baby by himself. A wife can't make a baby by herself, but God made their bodies to fit together perfectly, and together they can make a baby. So this is just a calm, beautiful way to explain sexual intercourse that a child can understand. And that can be the jumping off point for all kinds of conversations with your child. Now, I want to geek out on science for a second here and talk about other things you'll no doubt need to talk about here in this age group. Kids begin to be aware of all the variations in sexuality that are going on out there. And so I want to briefly mention 4 supposed conclusions from contemporary science about sexual orientation and gender identity, which are all the rage right now. So the 2 supposed conclusions that people say about science, about sexual orientation, is that sexual orientation is fixed at birth. Implicitly, people seem to be saying it's genetic. And the second thing they say with confidence is that parenting has no impact on sexual orientation. I want to tell you, we don't know that both those things are wrong to say. We don't know those things. And gender identity is the same. The 2 common claims from science are about gender identity: that sex is not binary male or female, but exists on a continuum, and that parenting has no impact, that on sexual identity, determination of gender identity is appropriately left to a child. All four of these things do not have the solid scientific base that people claim. Regarding sexual orientation, let me read you a quote from the quote about genetic causation. When people ask the question, is sexual orientation genetic? The answer is, this is a quote from a scholar, the answer is probably somewhat genetic, but not mostly so. And this scholar's estimate is that maybe 15 to 25% of the causation of sexual orientation is tied up with genes. And that's not a very high amount. Is that some sort of radically Christian scholar? No, that's one of the most secular scholars out there, J. Michael Bailey at Northwestern University. Sexual orientation is not mostly genetic. And a lot of the theorists and researchers say, well, it's other biological factors, but we don't know that at all. And so the reality is that we don't know scientifically what causes sexual orientation. And so I'm convinced that writers exaggerate the biological causes and minimize the social and other variables. And so we believe that no loving, responsible parent would hear that genetics has an influence on their child and say, well, my parenting makes no difference, so I give up. No, it's the job of parents to take the raw materials of a child's personality with the inclinations that are wired into them and shape them towards the best possible outcomes. Your child may have a tendency towards anxiety, towards anger, towards introversion, whatever it is. Take that and shape it in a direction that's constructive and good. In terms of gender identity, so the remarkable thing about the assertions I gave you about science, about orientation and gender identity, they don't fit together. If sexual orientation is fixed at birth, then how in the world can gender be fluid? It doesn't make any sense. And so the claim that science has established that gender is non-binary is just crazy. The top journal in my field is the American Psychologist. It's a wonderful journal, and about a year and a half ago, Jeanette Hyde and 5 colleagues published an article in which they argued that gender was non-binary. It was not just male and female. It's a whole spectrum of things in between. And what would amaze me about this article is that they wrote this very detailed article making a scientific argument, and they left out the elephant in the room. They never mentioned reproduction. How can you talk about sexuality without mentioning reproduction? The reality is every human being has a father and a mother biologically. You can't get around it. And there's certain types of human beings that can become fathers, and certain types of human beings that can become mothers. And yes, there's a few very rare cases where the biology is mixed up, but that doesn't erase the case that sexuality is fundamentally binary. So what can you do? The reality, while I say that science does not draw the conclusions that you're hearing, it doesn't mean that they prove the opposite. So the reality is we don't know what causes sexual orientation, and we don't know what causes sexual identity. So you've got to just jump in there and affirm your child's gender from the beginning. Tell them, I'm so glad you're a boy. It's a blessing that you're a boy. It's a blessing that you're a girl. It's a joy that you're a girl. Affirm their gender and encourage it, and encourage their identification with the same-sex parent. Mothers should spend time with their girls. Boys should spend time with their fathers. Fathers should spend time with their boys, and so forth. And both parents should express lavish affection to their children, and make that affection in part because I love you because you're a boy. I love you because you're a girl, and just encourage your child that way. As we move into prepubescence, 8 to 12. We begin to deal with the things that they're facing out in the world. So we've got to prepare them for puberty. We have to, their body's going to go through amazing changes. And so this should not be a surprise to them. You want to prepare them for that. And you also want to prepare them for the filth that's going to come at them from the cloud. And you prepare them for what they're going to hear at school about sex education. And so this is why we developed the principle of inoculation. And what we have in mind here is that parents have an idea of the kinds of things that are coming at the child. Be listening in your community for what kids are saying, and instead of kids facing it when they go out in the playground, bring it into the house and say, when you go out with your friends, you're probably going to hear somebody say pornography is the best thing in the world. It's so cool. You got to watch it. And so you're going to hear that. Let's talk about that. And so bring up those challenges. Bring up the peer pressure to be confused about your gender identity. Bring up the messages that marriage doesn't matter. Bring up the messages that Christians are rigid and hate sex, or bring up all the arguments that are going to be thrown at them, and you be the first one to tell them about these things and explain to them why. That way they're not shocked when they go out there, and they will trust you that much more to be the askable parent, they will come back and say, can we talk more about this? And which is exactly what you want. So then as you shepherd them through puberty, you keep loving on them, you keep telling them that they're beautiful, they're becoming more beautiful, they're becoming the person God wants them to be, that their body changing is a gift from God, and just keep supporting them all the way through. And then I'm going to talk briefly about adolescence. So adolescence, some of you parents may be thinking, I've been saving the talk until my child turned 14. And so, wow, have I missed, is it all over for me now? No, it's not. It's hard to start now, but do it if you must. And but keep going. So what I want to tell you is that if you've done the groundwork when your child is young, the main thing to work on in adolescence is your relationship with your child, because there are 4 major empirical predictors of kids sexually acting out. And the 4 major predictors are closeness to the parent, that what's going on in the peer group, whether they have a personal religious faith, and believe it or not, their grade point average in school. Those 4 things predict their sexual activity pretty powerfully. So closeness to a parent. Let me just say that the power of parents' moral messages lie in the power of the relationship with the child. If you're telling them this is what's good is good, that message will have so much more power if they know how deeply they're loved by you. So foster closeness with your time, your encouragement, your praise, and your approachability. Push aside teenage prickliness and spend that time. Do the things that they want to do. Play a video game with them if you have to. But just spend the time. Beware of becoming over controlling and fighting battles that are unnecessary. Give your kids. We decided early on, if our kids get a piercing, who cares? Every parent has to draw their lines their own way, but don't pick unnecessary battles. Draw the line on things that really matter. And so, we decided we're not going to interfere much with hairstyles. We're not going to interfere much with dress unless it's immodest. And so we didn't want to fight those battles, and we're so glad that we skipped some of those battles. So if you continue to talk to your kid about what's moral, and and they know you love them beyond craziness, that you'll be that much more effective in the moral battles that you give them. So praise your children for asking questions. Praise the signs that they get it. Restrain your impatience with clumsy questions. So do what you can to shape their peer group. The second variable is the peer group. This is so difficult. One of our children was in a peer group in middle school that we were very concerned that she was headed for a train wreck, and we were ready. If you have to pull the nuclear option, parents, and actually forbid their involvement or move, you may have to do that. Do it. It can be worth it. We changed churches to get a different youth group, to get a different peer group for our kids. And so but work on the less dramatic options first to shape and encourage the peers. Work on it when they're young to shape them in the direction of making good choices with their friends. To work on support your youth group and your youth group leader like crazy. Be involved with you know the parents of your kids' friends and stuff like that, and shape them in the direction of good peers. Take an active role in creating opportunities for developing positive peer relationships. The third variable is their faith. Keep going to church. Keep talking about God at home. Reading scripture, praying for them, putting them in a context where faith matters is really critical and important. And why in the world will GPA matter to kids acting out in sex? Well, because significance matters, and kids who don't get good grades tend to think that they're going nowhere. And so if they don't have hope for their lives, they why not do something crazy with sex? Just because nothing else is working out so well. So, but not every kid's a genius, So this doesn't mean if your kid is not good academically, not so strong academically, that it doesn't. The key is to teach them that their life matters. And so I think GPA is a proxy for this sense that my life matters, that I have value to somebody, that I have hope. And so if your child's not a whiz at school, who cares? Find something that they're good at and praise them for it, and use that as the lever for giving a vision for the future. Your child is good with manual things. Say, it's great. God may want you to be a plumber. That's fantastic. The world needs really great plumbers and welders and needs good garbage men and people who dig ditches and people who mow lawns and all those things. That's any work is good that's offered to the Lord. And so if you love that, let's work on that and build your skills in that. And so focus on rewarding progress, rewarding effort, rewarding character, and you can have this positive impact. So in conclusion, I just would say our vision for parenting, for sex education, is to be engaged in a lifelong conversation with kids that never stops, where you're talking about the most important things that matter, and you're doing so. And let me just say that our books, as I said earlier, are not meant to accomplish this for you. They're meant to tee up the conversation by getting the words on the table. That's what they're meant to do. So we hope you'll take advantage of this, and thank you for the opportunity for me to share my thoughts today. So.
Oh, Stan. Oh my goodness. Pure gold. Pure gold. I am so thankful that you joined us today. Thank you for sharing the wisdom that has come from so many years of personal experience and study and research. And gosh, I am listening, and I'm kind of wishing I could go back and redo some things with our older kids, because you brought so much understanding to a few things. So hey folks, we're just more than grateful that you joined us. We've got part 2 of week 7 coming up. Caitlin and I are going to have a discussion with Stan. We're going to ask him some questions and get into some nitty-gritty a little bit. So we'll see you for part 2.